think most of you are on the list by now, but I put out, I don't know, a couple text messages through the month telling you what's going on for the next events. If you're not on the list and you want to be, that's the QR code. If you don't know how to use a QR code, just open your camera and point it, and it'll give you a little thing to push, and then you push it. Technology's fun. Sometimes, you're right. Sometimes it's correct. Because next month, this is every month for those of you who don't know. I think most of you know that by now, but second Monday of every month. Hannah always wants to say Tuesday. It's Monday. Next month is all about praise and worship. So we have a lot of song, a lot of worship, a lot of prayer, the Word of God inviting us. What does Scripture say worship is, and how should we do it today? Sophia gave us a little glimpse today. What worship can be. The more we dive into the Spirit, and the more we get in depth with God, the more we're just like free to be, right? To dance, to jump around and wave your flags, or some of our Messianic friends do like the most beautiful dances one day. We'll learn. I feel like I'm doing the bluff. I don't know. That's just how it kind of comes out of me, apparently. I'm ready to praise. Again, what that looks like for you. We're going to invite you to get out of your comfort zone a little. Because when we come to church, we're here to worship, as he just said. What? Okay. Next is giving. Another QR code. You know how to, I just told you how to use it. So now you know. This is for giving for the ministry. Whatever we take in tonight, I'm actually going to give to Kim's favorite ministry, which is Torch Grab, where she's always giving. It's part of, that's why she's clapping, she knows what it is. Torch Grab, it's Front Range Christian partners with the school down in Africa, where they're feeding these children and giving them a place off of the streets and feeding them the Word of God and education all at the same time. Kim just went down, when was that, when you guys did the library? Yeah, in October. And took a whole library of books down there, because most of these kids had never seen books, right? The privilege we take for granted, these kids had literally never seen. So Front Range did some fundraisers with Torch Grab. It's also their choir teachers ministry. It's amazing. Again, on the streets where the people truly need the gospel, right? To hear in depths of the slums. So whatever we collect tonight through that, or I didn't put the cash thing out. You can give cash or check to me, or do that, and I'll give it to her. But without further ado, this is Miss Kimberly Probst. My dear friend, I love her. We used to be neighbors. That's how we actually know each other. We used to live, I don't know, 2 minutes from each other in my mountain life, in my other life. But when the Lord was putting together the schedule for this, last month was marriage, for that most of you are here, and he was like parenting, and I was like, I don't really have anything to say on that. And I was like, okay, Lord, who do you want? Immediately he was like, Kim. Kim has raised 12. I haven't met them all, but the ones I have met are so kind and so gracious, with the most amazing manners in public all of the time. It's crazy. So she's going to teach us how she did that, because I need to know that for myself. Y'all are good 99% of the time. But she's a homeschool mom. She's also a director of the enrichment that my girls go to. So I'm just going to let her have the mic now. I love you. Okay?
I think so. It doesn't help. Okay, good. So, am I talking to all moms here? Are you guys all moms? Okay. Okay, good. So, this is hard to encapsulate, but it's like a result of a long walk with the Lord and prayer and asking Him and Him pointing me to different things and bringing things from my past and bringing people in my path. And so I'll try to explain it, but it's very different than what the world acknowledges, which you'd expect, right? Because the Lord's ways are different. So some things might seem odd, but it really works. So first of all, these are my kiddos. So this is an old picture because the youngest is now 8. But now that I have 7 who have graduated from high school and 2 that are married and one's doing a PhD, they're not like all at the same place to get a picture. So this picture at least has them all. So you can see them, but the baby is now 8. So, yeah. So I went to a church picnic and I met a wonderful fellow called Ted Viner. I don't know if you ever met him. He went to the same picnic, and this was before my husband was the pastor of the church he's at, and he was praying, and he had these books. It's the Christian history of the U.S. and the principles that they used and how they did their parenting and everything and their education. And he was praying and asked the Lord, who do I give these books to? Well, at the same time, I was praying, Lord, I'm homeschooling, I'm new to this. What do you want me to teach? Put in my hands what you want me to teach. So he was led to give these to me, and he actually ended up becoming a dear friend who moved across the street from us and became a godfather to one of my kids. He would come over almost every day for tea and explain these things, and we'd talk about them as friends, you know. He was an older man, he was in his 70s, and he's since passed away, but we will see him again. And he shared all this with me, which then I implemented. So if you want to do all the reading of this stuff, it's really interesting. It's like of Plymouth Plantation and all the historical documents and how they founded America and all the principles that they used. So, but there's another book that does a lot of the same things, which I was reminded of from my childhood. So I'll read that book to you. You can always get those. So this book, The Country Bunny and the Gold Shoes. And this really does explain a lot of the principles in those other books. So, okay, can you guys see the pictures if I hold it up like that?
The lights back on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you could. Do you want to all sit on the floor in a circle and I'll sit down? I don't mind, that's how I usually do books. You're good where you are? Okay. We hear of the Easter Bunny who comes each Easter day before sunrise to bring eggs for boys and girls, and so we think there is only one, but this is not so. There are really 5 Easter bunnies, and they must be the 5 kindest and swiftest and wisest bunnies in the whole wide world, because between sunset on Easter Eve and dawn on Easter morning, they do more work than most rabbits do in a whole year. Now, I'm not like an Easter Bunny person, I believe in the Lord, but wait till you hear this book and how it explains the parenting. When one of the Easter bunnies grows old and can no longer run fast, the old, wise, and kind grandfather bunny who lives at the Palace of Easter Eggs calls the bunnies together from the whole world to select the very best one to take the place. Often a mother bunny says to her child, now if you learn to be wise and kind and swift, someday you may grow up to be one of the Easter bunnies. And all the babies tried their very best so that they could grow up and go to work for the grandfather bunny at the Palace of Easter Eggs. One day, a little country girl bunny with a brown skin and a little cotton ball of a tail said, "Someday I will grow up to be an Easter bunny. You wait and see." Then all the big white bunnies who lived in fine houses and the jackrabbits with long legs who can run so fast laughed at the little cottontail and told her to go back to the country and eat a carrot. But she said, "Wait and see." The little girl Cottontail grew up to be a young lady Cottontail, and by she had a husband, and then one day, very much to her surprise, there were 21 Cottontail bunnies to take care of. Then the big white rabbits and jackrabbits with long legs laughed and laughed, and they said, "What did we tell you? Only a country rabbit would go and have all those babies. Now take care of them and leave Easter eggs to the great big men bunnies like us." And they went away liking themselves very much. Cottontail stopped thinking about hopping over the world with lovely eggs for boys and girls, and she took care of her babies, and one day, when her children stopped being babies and were little girl and boy bunnies, she called them to her and said, "Now we are going to have some fun." Then to two of them she gave little brooms and showed them how to sweep out the cottage, and two she taught how to make beds, and two more went with her to the kitchen, and in no time at all had found out how to cook a good dinner. And with those went two little dishwashers, and they made glasses shine like crystal. Two had wash tubs full of soap suds, and they washed all the linen, and two did the sewing and the mending. And two had sweet voices, were taught to sing, and two more to dance, and these amused all the others while they worked, so they were gay and happy. Not the modern meaning of that word. Two others were soon digging in the garden. To two she gave paints and crayons so they could paint pretty pictures for the walls. And when Mother Cottontail had given out all the tasks, she looked around, and there was only one little boy bunny left, and he was sad and lonely. Then Mother Cottontail said to him, "You are the most polite of all my children, so I shall make you keeper of my chair. And whenever I come to dinner, you shall set me politely at table." Then one day, when the little rabbits were half grown up, she heard a great talk among the woods rabbits, and when she asked what it was about, they said, "Haven't you heard? One of the 5 Easter bunnies has grown too slow, and we are all going to the Palace of Easter Eggs to see old grandfather pick out a new one to take his place." So she called her little cottontails, and they all set off to the palace to see the fun. But their mother was sad because she thought that now she was nothing but an old mother bunny and could only look on, and that a big handsome white rabbit or a long-legged jack would be chosen. When they came to the Palace of Easter Eggs, there were bunnies everywhere on the great lawn, and the ones that hoped to be the Easter bunnies stood together, and all the others looked at them and clapped their paws. Then the big front door opened, and the old, wise, kind grandfather came hopping slowly out, and he told the biggest and those with the longest legs to show what they could do. They jumped and ran and showed him their pretty white fur, and they were all very fast and very clever. But still, he did not pick one, and he said to them, "You are very pretty and you are fast, but you have not shown me that you are either kind or wise." Then his kind old eyes looked everywhere, and at last they rested on little Cottontail Mother, where she stood with her children around her, and he called her to come right up to the palace steps. So she took her 21 children and went up and stood before him. And when he spoke, his voice was so kind that she was not frightened at all, and he said, "What a large family you have, my dear. I suppose they take all of your time." But she said, "When they were babies, that was so, but now they are so well trained that they do most of the work for me." "Ah," he said, smiling, "you must be very wise to train so many children so well. But tell me, do they always look so happy, and do they always hold their ears up so prettily?" "Indeed they do," she answered, "and we never have a tear or a cross word in our little cottage. If I do say so myself, they do carry their ears better than most bunnies." Then he said, patting the nearest bunny on the head, "You must be very kind indeed to have such a happy home. It is too bad that you have had no time to run and grow swift, as I might then have made you my fifth Easter bunny. At that, the mother cottontail started to laugh, and then she whispered to the little bunnies, and every rabbit on the lawn looked to see what would happen, and the old grandfather leaned forward to watch. Suddenly, all of her 21 children raced away, and Cottontail dashed after them. And in no time at all, she had them all back again in line in front of the palace. Then the old, kind, wise grandfather bunny said, I see that you are swift also. It is too bad that you cannot go carry my eggs because you will have to stay at home to take care of your children. Mother Cottontail nodded her head to the little ones, and they all formed a line and bowed low to the grandfather. Then she stepped in front of them and she said, they will take better care of the house than I. Then she called them up 2 by 2, and as she put her hands on their heads, each pair, she said, these are my sweepers. They keep the cottage clean as your hand. These make the beds without a wrinkle. These cook my dinner. These wash the dishes. These tend the garden. These wash and dry all the clothes. These do the mending. These sing and these dance to keep us merry while we work. These are learning to paint pretty pictures for our walls. And this littlest one of all pulls my chair for me when I sit to table. So you see, I can leave them to take care of the house until I come home. Then the old, kind, wise grandfather said, you have proved yourself to be not only wise and kind and swift, but also very clever. Come to the palace tomorrow, for that is Easter Eve, and you shall be my fifth Easter bunny.
Makes me want to have more kids.
So I read this book when I was a little child, and it just made my imagination. Like, before I knew the Lord, before I had 12 kids, before anything, and I just knew it was possible. And you could have a house like this. And then you pair that with the historical books about the same thing, and you really can raise children that way. So, you know, the book goes on, but basically she comes home at the end of the day, and everything was done just as she said. Sure enough, just as she had said, everything was in order, the floors were swept, and there were 2 lovely new pictures painted and hanging on the wall. The dishes were washed and shown in the cupboard, the clothes were washed and mended and nicely hung away, and her 21 children were all sound asleep in their little beds. So, this is not just imaginary, this can really be. So it inspired my imagination. I have papers for all of you, by the way. That way you can take it home and think about it. Because it's like completely different than the world. We're taught, you know, kids should play and don't give them chores, and you know, they need to be kids, and don't give them too many responsibilities and stuff like that. And that is the opposite of what we should be doing, really. So what I wanted was a delight-directed home of happy, productive kids who help out and strive together as one, which is a biblical family. And that's why we have all our gifts. Like your 2 wonderful children, one singing and praying and another one dancing, that is exactly it. We look different. We might be different than the world. When I offered piano lessons to my kids, I didn't offer them to every kid. We can't afford that for 12 kids. But whoever really wanted to do piano, those were the kids I paid for piano. And so we have 5 of them that do piano, and 1 plays the cello, but they don't all play the cello. If we have a special treat for someone, we don't give it to all of them. We take turns. So like if we go to McDonald's and they have a toy and it's perfect for one of my kids that loves frogs, I'll get that for that one kid, but not for everyone else. And the other kids are happy because they see that, oh, that one kid really should get that one because they love frogs. And they know that the next time it'll be a shark and they'll like it, you know, they'll have something for them. So I make sure everyone gets a turn, but it's not like fair. It's just. And there's a difference. So I also asked myself, were families like this in history? And if so, how did they do it? So America was actually built on these principles, and that is really hidden from us now. Like, a lot of schools do not teach these things. They try to tell you a lot of lies about our pilgrims and make them seem like they were really racist or something. They were not. There were people that came later that were, and there were people that came before that were. But this group really loved the Lord, and so they followed those principles. So their books actually teach the 7 principles, biblical principles. The first one is individuality. So that's like those kids in the story. I was a kid that was raised with rotating chores. So if you think about rotating chores, that's more like a communism. Right? I couldn't stand it, because you'd have some kids that would, one of my chores was to clean the brass. So you had to really scrub it and make the brass shine. And I hated it. When my turn, I scrubbed it really clean. And then the next week, my sister, who was less careful, would not scrub it. And then 2 weeks later, I would get those brass again, and I'd have to work twice as hard to undo what was done. I would have loved to just have the job of brass. And then I could take pride in it and not have to rotate, and then the next week it's something else. Like, everyone's individual. So I have some kids who actually like taking the trash out. I have my daughter, you do too? My daughter, who's autistic, she does the whole kitchen. And she even asked for more things. She's like, Mom, can I clean the microwave too? I'm like, sure, go ahead, yeah. So like, she sees a need and does it. And I have another kid who does all the laundry and brings it, does it all, and then brings it to our room and to all the kids that it belongs to, and they fold it and put it away. I have kids who cook, and a kid who mops all the floors. And we got her like a special, each kid at their job, we can get them something special, like the products that they really want to clean that floor well. And we got her a good floor cleaner, and the things so that she can do a good job of it. And she gets to choose what she wants, what kind of dishwasher soap do you want, the one who does the dishes, it's really their job, so they get to choose. So individuality is one thing. They're so different. And the Lord has made those things in each kid that is different. And so you can't think of raising kids as though it's like a across the board thing. It's like that one that the Lord is raising to be a chef is very different than the one that the Lord is raising to be an academic. And very different than somebody who's going to be an engineer or who's going to work with computers. And he sort of lets you see these glimpses. And then you can give them more and more opportunities for what they're made for. Then the second principle is self-government, which is internal self-government instead of external self-government. So the more external you have, the less internal you have. So sometimes you have very controlling families and they wonder why they don't have such good results, especially as kids get older. Because you should be moving from more external to more internally motivated. Or the people who give their kids stickers for practicing the piano are never going to have a Mozart because they're working for external, not the intrinsic, oh, I just want to sit down and play it. And maybe you shouldn't pay for piano for that kid. It's like that kind of thing. So you want to get from external to more internal government so that you can trust them, so that they can be trustworthy. The third principle is character. You want faith, courage, and brotherly love, and you want to encourage those things. The world does the opposite. We have kids with sibling rivalry. They're going to hate each other as adults. We want them to be connected. A lot of my kids, they do rock climbing together once a week. The ones who've grown up, they get together and do rock climbing, or they do skiing. So they still want to see each other and love each other. And that's part of the goal, right? Not kids that are like gone and don't ever want to see each other again. And then conscience, liberty of conscience. Like, these are really deep subjects. Each one, like, you could go really deep into it. And the Bible has all these verses about it, and these books go into it. But your conscience is a sacred property. It's like, it's your knowledge of right and wrong. And you start to trust that child's conscience, especially if they know the Lord, that they know what the Lord is telling them. And so as they grow up, you can trust that. And they're growing up into the Lord. So, and then the form of government, self-governing citizens that are from internal to external. Haven't we come far away from that? Now we have people looking for security, that want the government to provide everything. It's totally the opposite than people that used to be self-governed, not people voting themselves money or, it wasn't like that at all. One of our first presidents didn't even want to be president. I think it was George Washington. He learned about it in the mail, and he's like, okay. But now you have people like desperate for power, and it's not like that. It shouldn't be like that. They're supposed to be civil servants who serve us, like bottom up, like instead of top-down leadership, bottom-up leadership. And you can have that in your home too. So you don't want to be a tyrant there either. You do want kids to obey, and you can teach that, but you can also, you want to obey the Lord yourself, have kids seeing you obey. And then after that, it's really bottom-up leadership. You serve them, but not in a selfish, worldly way, like people who just spoil their kids, but really like seek their best, their character, their growth in the Lord. And then there's how that local seed of self-government is planted is intended to be the family. So a lot of you guys are homeschoolers too, right? So you're even bringing the school home too and doing that as well. And that's how it's supposed to be, is the family, the church, and then civil government. We're doing it backwards in our society. We're having like schools teach them the values of society that we don't even want them to have. And they're tearing down the family. They're breaking down the family and trying, in some schools they're even trying to make it so parents are questioned, your parents, that they're idiots for teaching you this. We really know evolution or stuff like that. And instead of honoring parents. So I think our churches are doing it right by honoring the parents and honoring the family. And you guys learned about marriage last week, so that's another whole area. And then the last one is voluntary association, the voluntary union of peoples. So our United States are a voluntary union of 50 states. And in a household, obviously the kids don't choose who their parents are, but you can have that principle of voluntary association. Get their permission for things, have respect for their property. Don't immediately, like a friend comes over and you force them to share their toys are their property. If they don't want to share it, it would be nice if they share it, but you can't force someone to share it. It's their property. And then if you demonstrate that you're willing to share with your property, they might share. But you can't just take it, because otherwise that's like the government grabbing our stuff and giving it to other people. And you don't have an opportunity to be generous. So it's like, it's sort of the opposite of a lot of what I see. So what does it result in? That effort producing ownership. So things like kids that take pride in their jobs. They really want the kitchen to look nice, or they love doing the laundry, or they have their own dog that they walk and they feed, and they won't forget. You don't have to do it because it's their dog. I wouldn't dream of feeding their dog or walking their dog. Real responsibility and trust. They can have real responsibility, even at young ages, like 7 or 8, they start wanting this. And then the younger kids see the other ones with trust and responsibility and respect from you, and they want that too. Can I have a job? Can I do something? And it can be real, even for young kids. Delight-directed jurisdiction. So I let kids choose their responsibilities. My guess from that book is that the mom didn't just decide who was going to paint and who was going to do the cooking. She really saw into their hearts that those would love that job. And you can run a house delight-directed like that. So kids can choose things. They can have some real choices. And then they'll love their jobs. And what I found is that if you learn to do one job well, you can do all jobs well. Because, we might think, oh, well, we have to rotate our chores because what if they grow up and they don't know how to do the dishes? But that doesn't really happen, because if you have one kid doing the dishes well and another kid doing the laundry well, you can count on them. And then there'll be times when that another kid is away at a sleepover or something and they'll cover their chore. But also, if you can do one chore well, you can do every chore well. So it really, really works. They learn how to really manage something well. And then that carries over to everything else. And then also liberty without license. So liberty with responsibility. That's like, how do I explain that? It's like, the more you control, the less they can demonstrate that they have the self-government to be trusted. So, yes, you do have to teach them to obey you, but the larger goal is to get beyond that, to where you can trust them, and where you know that you can come home and all those things are done. So I have my autistic daughter is with my youngest daughter at home. Other people are at other activities, and I know when I get home, all the dogs will be walked, it'll be tidy, she will have fed dinner to her, it's going to be in order and happy. So, and then private property and stewardship. So like their property really is their property. Sometimes we treat it like we own the house and we can do what we want with it, but it's so much better if they actually take the ownership. Then they don't lose their things everywhere because they care about their things. They express individuality. Each child is unique, finding their gifts. Delight-directed learning. So you can do that in homeschool too, with their own special things. So my oldest daughter, she loved history and literature, and so she didn't really like science experiments all that much. So I let her science be the history of scientists. That meant so much more to her. And then I had another kid that absolutely loved the experiments and even did them with the other kids. And then I had some kids teaching science to the others, and some were gifted teachers, and some read aloud, like read the Lord of the Rings to the kids at the table. And so they would come to me and they'd say, could I teach a class? And I'd be sure, and they would prepare it properly and really do a good job. So sometimes they can even teach each other. And you end up with kids who want to be part of the home and who want to contribute. So I've found that now that I have 7 kids that have graduated, I have kids who actually want to come back to be with us. They want to spend, one's doing a PhD and she comes back in the summer to stay with us. My son, he's working at Lockheed Martin. He comes up almost every weekend to hang out with us. And that's what you want, right? Kids that want to be with you. And because I didn't have a tyranny, and I let them grow into what they were going to be and trusted them and respected them, and they really felt that. So wouldn't they want to come home? And genuine love and concern for each other, so they really like each other. They will call each other without me even knowing about it, or organize rock climbing, or skiing, or there's a, I don't know if you know YouVersion, the Bible study. It's like you can do it on your phone. Did you know that you can invite other people and do it where you can put comments? So my kids started a, New Testament in a year. They invited me and each other, and then we all put comments. And this way we can stay connected even though I have a few in other cities. And I didn't force that, they invited me. So, and the seed grows and replicates, and it becomes a legacy, a true legacy. I want them to raise their kids with that too, with the grace and the love and the liberty and the individuality in their lives. And so how do you do it? I mean, you ask the Lord specifically, because each kid is different, and each family is different, and each of you is different. But you want to be moving from internal to external, not the other way around. And be growing yourself. So, always be in the Word and asking the Lord what you can do and what He's working on. There's always something the Lord's doing and showing me, or a verse or something that He's answering. Give of yourself to others. This school in Africa really means a lot to our family. I even brought 2 of my kids there, and they helped me set up the library there. And they love books, and they wanted to give books to these kids. And the kids in Africa were so excited, they wanted to grab the books even before they were shelved. So they were sitting on the ground, like just reading books on the floor, because they don't have books. And now they do. So that makes a difference. There's one little boy in that school who's in 8th grade, and he wants to be a neuroscientist. And he can. And there are books there that have all the nerves and all the human body in detail that he could go through and study. And he could have his goal. And someday I'll meet him and he'll reach his goal. And so giving to others, like really, as a family, we have people who live with us. It seems crazy, but despite being a large family, we usually have 2 or 3 people who live with our family, and we have some outbuildings so that they can have their own space, but people who are like going through a hard time. We have someone going through a divorce, and we have a student who's one of my teachers as well, who's trying to afford college at CCU. So, not everybody has to have people live with them. But for us, it's just what the Lord's done with our family. And then the kids also are generous. One other principle I do is don't ask anyone to do anything you're not willing to do yourself. So, like if you're going to teach someone to do the dishes, you want to be, you're letting them do the dishes, but you're not giving it to them because you hate it. You love those jobs, and you can show them that you love them and do it with them. And sometimes you could be like, I'll just help you today, and let's do this together. And that way it's like you're not just throwing things off. It's like you're willing to do it yourself. I teach some math classes online for a program, and I assign the math to myself as well as to them, so that they know that I'm not going to give them anything that I'm not willing to do myself. And that way I can be sure I haven't overdone the homework too and stuff. And then they trust me because they can see that I'm willing to do it too. And consider that every blessing you have is to share in wider circles with others. So like the school in Kenya with the books, and there are things you can do, things you can give. I have a daughter who likes to knit, and she just learned it herself and makes hats and stuff with like one of those little circular things. And she gives them to a homeless ministry to give to people who don't have hats. And that's one way to really be warm when you're homeless, you know, to have a good hat and to have good socks. So, you know, things like that. And the seed projects at the school. Every child gets $1 and then they go out and grow it and they bring it back and then it goes to Torch Grab Africa. And this makes a difference to kids. I mean, last year, the money they earned with just their bicycles and little garage sales and things was enough to buy all the windows in the school. So, you know, money goes really far there. And they had like dirt floors, and so then they were able to pay for terrazzo floors, which is like they pour like something that hardens, and that way they didn't have to have chiggers get into their shoes. And I know what that was like because I went there the year before and I was painting, and I'm short, so I painted down near the bottom, the edging, and I got chiggers biting me. And these poor kids would sit in their chairs and get bitten while they're trying to learn. So now we paid for the floors. So these are things that matter, you know, really, really help. And so then kids are thinking beyond themselves to other people in the world. We're teaching, I was asking the Lord, I wanted to do more in the world. And then the Lord gave a ministry that was looking for teachers to teach online kids in Indonesia, Afghani refugees. And so I'm teaching English to them. And then my 14-year-old daughter is teaching art to 6 through 8-year-olds in Indonesia. So she's trusted, she can do that. She prepares the lessons, she makes little cute frogs with tongues that come out and, you know, colors and everything. And she teaches these kids in Indonesia. So, I mean, it doesn't have to all look like that, but all you do is ask the Lord and He'll bring things that you can do and that your family is supposed to do, or that each individual kid will be involved in. So, that's basically how to explain it. There are a few other little things I put on the bottom, like practicing obedience yourself, and kids see that you're willing to obey God. You have someone over you, and they will listen. And then a concept of I am my brother's keeper. One day I was reading through Genesis, and remember Cain when he kills his brother, and he says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And I'm like, yes, you should have been, you weren't. So I let my kids have authority over each other, which is completely opposite to society. Because a lot of people are like, only the parent. And that's why you get these kids that say, you're not the boss of me, because they don't respect authority in general. They just, only the one parent that's the tyrant is the person to be obeyed. And only for as long as they need to. And then when they grow up, they throw that off. So if children have some authority over each other, then, and of course you want that older one to be a good steward, not to misuse that. But if you trust them, then they can be a good steward over the others. I remember I was a babysitter for my 3 other siblings, and I was given no authority whatsoever over them. And that is a scary thing, because they could do anything and I could do nothing. And I didn't want my kids to have that. So they do have, if they're in charge, they have authority. And that makes a big difference in a family, because then you can trust them. And I can trust the ones that are at home. I'm going to get home and the house isn't burned down and they're eating food and it looks neat. And then praying for wisdom in every area you need it, trusting Him because He answers, and asking God to show you the heart of each child, like their needs, and to really see into what they're doing. Like if they misbehave, why? What are they doing? Like I had one child that, my autistic daughter, would always point out the other kids that were doing wrong. And I had to really pray about it because I was like, that's tattling and that's annoying. But then I realized she just cared about justice. She wanted to see that justice was done. And so then I addressed her on that level. And then I explained to her that, you know, I might sometimes offer grace for this reason or that reason. And then she understood that concept too. So, you know, sometimes they aren't really misbehaving. They just need to be understood. So, I hope that helps. Does anyone have any questions?
This is honestly amazing. I'm just like fine. I don't know if it's but I have a question about like how do you discipline and get them to listen without being controlling or tiring? Because that's definitely what I walk where I walk the line. I'm like, I don't know what the line is on that.
How old are they first?
They're little. So they're 2 and 5.
Okay, and at that age, you do need to be able to say, put your shoes on, and they need to put their shoes on.
Yeah.
And so that's not a tyrant. It would be if they are 14. So I think that just like you grow from external to internal, your goal should be to move away from more external to more internal so that you can say, everyone get ready, and they know that means they put their shoes on and they walk their dog and they do this and they do that and they're ready. But when they're really young, you have to have a little more external. So, and that's okay. It's just you want to move away from that eventually.
So how would you discipline? Like if they're not like listening or just refusing or any of that?
Well, you can use different ways. For our family, I'm a very tender-hearted person, so I had to be a little firmer, and that was hard for me. And so I used a book called To Train Up a Child, which tells you kind of how to just set a standard. But you can do any method you want as long as your yes is yes and your no is no. And that it doesn't change unless there's like some extreme reason for it.
How do you keep good attitudes?
Good attitudes. Okay, well that's one thing. I insist on good attitudes. So one thing we do is we watch like movies and stuff with discernment. She was asking about how do you get good attitudes. So we watch movies with discernment. So we'll see a movie and then we'll stop in the middle, because if you just watch the movie, you're actually just absorbing it, and you might even copy things in it. But if you're watching it with discernment, you're actually evaluating it, and then you're not absorbing it. You're critiquing it. It's a completely different thing. So like you can be watching a movie and say, does that seem like a good attitude? And then the kids will say no, you know, and then you can talk about it. And I always make sure that they have a good attitude about things, or I'll make them redo things. Because if you have a kid they're taking out the trash and they kick it and they do it and they didn't obey, they didn't take the trash out because they didn't do it with a good attitude. So you have to do it again. Bring it back in. And we'll do it again. Or like if you have a line of students and you're going to chapel and they're not walking in a straight line, they're all unruly, well, you take them right back and say, okay, we're going to walk again. And usually kids don't like doing things over again. And so that solves it, because they won't, you know, they'll know that you insist on a good attitude. And I think you can get that. Because you expect it. I think you can really expect things and get what you expect. But the world tells you you can't. They tell you that people can't help their feelings, and that bad attitudes are normal and sibling rivalry is normal, but you don't have to accept that. Anyone else?
Can you say more about in
internal versus external, like how to switch from external to internal for the child.
So it's kind of like a movement, and for each child it'll be a little different. Some kids are ready to govern themselves and other kids aren't yet. And it may not even be an age thing. It might be, this kid is more mature and ready to be trusted with that. But the goal is to move from that, from external to internal. External us, like having the rules and everything, and to them governing themselves.
Like having the internal compass.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and so that's our goal. So you don't want to keep doing external when they're ready to move on to being trusted for more. And that's frustrating for kids too. That they're never trusted and they're never believed and they're never, they want that. They want to be respected.
How do we undo that? I know, my kids are in here, but sorry, throwing you guys under the bus. They do not have that internal. Like I ask them to do something, and sometimes it's today, for example, 4 times over. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I forgot. Unless I'm there hunting them down some days, it doesn't get done. So where did I go wrong? How do I fix it?
What would you guys say? How would you want to be given that responsibility and trusted? How would you want it to look?
Take your laundry and the dishes. That was our fight today, right?
Well, one way is like letting them do it in their own way, as long as it's done.
That's my rule, as long as it's done.
Because, yeah, I have...
sat there for 3 hours when mommy said 4 times to pick it up and put it away.
See, the kid in our family who does the laundry is allowed to stay up later. They can choose which movies to put on, and everybody around them has to agree, like they're the ones in charge because they're doing the laundry.
I like that.
So there are certain privileges that come with certain jobs.
Why is laundry like that?
Because I have 12 kids.
Oh.
And the laundry... And the one who does the dishes didn't need that. Like she was already like on it.
So I feel like one of the ways, that I've been, I don't know, me and my cousin are both like very, like, I would say we're strict parents. And I'm realizing that it's not necessarily the best way to always like raise your children. And I don't know, so like my daughter will do things or say something like if she wants to do something naughty, she'll ask me. She's like, I was thinking about doing this. What would the discipline be?
She's very smart.
She is, but like I'm like, oh, I wouldn't like you're not gonna get in big trouble for that. But that's something I definitely don't want you to do. She's like, okay, and then she'll go do it. I don't know. That's not self-motivated. She's motivated by consequences. And so I definitely know I've done that wrong. I just don't know how to reverse that.
How do you reverse that?
Yeah. And she's only 5, so there's some time.
Yeah, I would say you sit down with them and say, we're going to do things differently. I want your input. I want you to want to do things and enjoy them. I want to trust you. I want to respect you. So you give me your ideas. And then even a 5, 6-year-old, they can really share things. Like, they can. They have an idea of how they would like it to work, or how they could be respected and how they would feel with that, or, instead of just worrying about the consequence.
I've even done it and asked my child things like that, what they think the consequence should be.
That's good
Because
too.
a lot of the times they'll put a higher price on that behavior than you probably would have. And then it might motivate them not to do it, or to do it.
Or even just ask them, why would you want to do that? And some of them, like that kid, is probably just wanting to know the boundaries, wanting to know justice, wanting to know where the rules are
Yeah.
and what they'll look like. And, you know, you could even get their input on what rules should be and what rules they might not need anymore.
I had a question about, like, what am I trying to say? Were you and your husband, oh, this is really loud.
I know, I felt like that too.
Were you and your husband always on the same page, or how do you parent together when there's differences in parenting styles?
That is true. I think it's very important to have the same page, but you can talk to them about this idea. You know, that wouldn't it be great if the kids were responsible for their own things? You know, like, I don't really like spiders that much, and I don't really like snakes, but I had kids that loved them, so we have a spider, we have a tarantula, and we have had snakes. But I didn't have anything to do with it. Like, I didn't feed them, I didn't, because I don't. But they, you know, they know they're responsible or the thing dies. And they didn't. They were responsible.
It never got out, actually.
No, never got
That's
it.
good. She's like,
It's like really, it's like radical trust. Because we don't live in a world like that, right? We always are like, I'll trust you when you prove yourself. And then you end up with these kids doing video games in your basement at 20 years old. And they're never ready to be trusted, right?
How do you deal with social media?
So social media is a very interesting one because you want to teach them to have a self-government to handle it. Not to get, like, we're a very tech house. My husband's an IT director in the school, and almost every kid has an iPad and everything. And they don't overdo it. They don't overuse it. They don't misuse it. And we could certainly tell if they did because my husband knows how to track those things. But we don't have to. Because the idea is you want them to be self-governed before they leave home so that they don't get into pornography and all these things as an adult because you like super monitored or you super protected and they can't get anywhere.
There's software too that you could put on their stuff to like it alerts you for certain
You
like
can do
words
that.
and things like that to help them.
Our school has that. So like if someone goes to a wrong website, my husband gets notified and then he'll talk to the student and say, why did you go to this site? Or, you know, like have a real conversation with them, you know? You can do that, but you also don't have to do that if you train them to really be self-governed.
Do you talk to them about pornography and stuff, or how do you?
Yeah,
how
you can talk to
how do
them
you make
about,
aware of like what not to do?
yeah, what's wrong and what's right to follow their conscience. So that they're following their own conscience. They know when something's not right and they'll go away from it. That's the goal.
There's also like picture books we're gonna give for our 8-year-old probably to start, but it's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And it's like a plan too that they have if they happen to see something and like what to do, you know. So
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think kids can be very, like, they can navigate their own life. And sometimes we're so worried about purity and stuff that we don't give them the chance to navigate their own life, especially as they get older.
I feel like the more you control it, the more they want to rebel.
Almost, yeah, it's like a forbidden fruit.
That's how my husband was, totally. I see that for sure.
Well, when I first came to know the Lord, I had a friend who was telling me that, oh, you have to be careful what you bring in your house because, you know, these things will bring bad demons with them and stuff like that. And so I had a giant garage sale and sold all our movies. Well, I found out pretty quickly about the gifts of the Spirit because my husband came back from the trip very upset. And he said, "You just gave away all our teaching examples." So he used them as teaching examples. So then I learned something that, and then I had a couple movies that were like forbidden, and those became like the desired things, and I learned some stuff over the years. Yeah. My poor oldest daughter, I focused so much on purity that she's 28, she's doing a PhD, and she would love to get married, but she doesn't know how to show a boy that she's interested, and she can't tell if he is. So, I totally failed there. So I'm, trying to be a little less that way with the younger ones, and I pray that she'll find someone. Because, you can go too far in that direction, and then how do they meet anybody? They grow up, they graduate high school, and there's nobody.
Well, in a child, I was on and then it wasn't. Appropriate way, I should walk these kids out. Isa, I do need you to go away because I need to ask this question for real. Go to Daddy and shut the door, please. We are getting to that age where conversations need to be had.
No, we're not. Sophia, go with your sister, sweetheart.
Yes, goodbye to both of you. We've already had the body talk, right? That stuff's coming, the changes. But when you started saying that purity stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. Don't look at boys, don't talk to them, don't even think about it until you're ready for them to be their husband. But I'm like, now that you said that, I'm like, oh, that's probably a really drastic line. Again, from where I was, because I was not.
And what's so bad about them looking at the young men that love the Lord around them and seeing that someone could be a potential husband?
Because the world has corrupted it, and I don't know how to undo who I was, right? So how to introduce that kind of stuff in a godly way.
Yeah, just not the too far that I did.
Right, because I think I'm right there. I've gone too far. So, but the Lord has been tugging on my heart to I don't want to say undo, but to have the real conversations, but I don't know how to do that even close to in a biblical way. Because I never had even a worldly conversation with my parents about any of these things.
Wow, yeah. And that's another thing that I didn't mention here, but you want to have lots of conversations with them. Like real people. Like even your 6-year-old, they can be addressed as a real person, that has real thoughts that,
Yeah, keep it
it's a
that
whole
low,
different thing, yeah.
so that they keep coming to you.
They're just, again, we read a lot of scripture, so they're asking about virgins and being married and having children, and they want to know, and I am unprepared to tell them.
Ask the Lord for help.
That's all I've been asking. I'm like, Lord, give me a book, give me something, because I don't want to have that conversation, but I know it needs to be had.
When it comes to that's a way my mom slayed our shit so with all of me and my siblings. And she did so basically it's a little different from where you're starting off, but all the questions, all the sexual questions we had or whatever, hey, someone was talking about this when we were young, talking 6 years old, whatever, what is that? What does that
They're
mean?
so sheltered that they don't know. They don't have questions to ask. We sheltered, we're homeschooled, right? They're not around these flagrant children.
We were sheltered too, but I guess we had farm animals and stuff, so what is that, or whatever. And my mom would answer every question without blinking, without freaking out, no weird faces, just would answer it in appropriate for that age. Just say it with nothing. So when we got older, we're like, what's a virgin? She would just, oh, it's a lot, okay. I did not care. I didn't want to. I remember my friends coming to me and asking, like, wanting to look stuff up, and I was like, you think babies come out of your butt? Are you kidding? This is where they come out, and that's how they are made. And my friends were like, but it wasn't a taboo thing. I didn't need to go look it up or be weird about it, because it was a safe place.
Questions can be answered, and there's no bad question.
But that's the intense one.
And you can do things like when you're watching a movie together, and you know there's a couple that's not married that's doing something they shouldn't. Well, then you can say, well, they're not married.
My kids do. Why are they touching each other? They're not married.
It would be fine if they were married. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with affection. But I mean, my husband's part Latin, so you know we're definitely
Oh yeah, my
not
husband and I do. But
sheltered about that. Because no, we love each other.
This is my fear, that when I tell them that, then they're gonna know it about me and my husband.
I think that's where my fear is. I don't want them to think about mommy and daddy doing it. That's my own fear.
Well, what's wrong with that? People used to live in one-room cabins and they knew everything.
Because again, I didn't grow up that way. So for me, that means to break these bounds of this stuff was taboo. You didn't talk about it. You didn't do any of it.
Well, see, they know when we lock our door, it's locked for a reason. And we had one very smart little boy who was able to unlock it, and then we had to explain to him why we're locking the door. So he was too not open.
Wait, so please, what did you tell me?
Yeah, what was your explanation?
Because we do that, and my kids literally peek under the door, so now we have to like put a towel on the bottom of the door.
Yeah, we're just like, you know, we want time together. We're married. We love each other. Why is it that the only family in TV that has a loving husband and wife that are like attracted to each other are the Addams family? And that that's considered creepy. It's not. So, but you know, I've had a bunch of teenagers. I've had 7 graduate. So, and I haven't had any of them act like teenagers that you hear about. So you don't have to accept that. They don't have to be like that. They start being really our friends, our apprentices. You know, I have one son who's 14 who actually goes into work with my husband every day and helps with all the tech of the school. He does all the networking, he crawls through things, he fixes things for the teachers, and he is learning. And there was another son before him who graduated now, and he was snapped up by Lockheed Martin because he wasn't even 18. And they gave him a test, and he knew all the stuff more than a college person did, so they just hired him. And now he's a boss of other people. Delight directed. That kid wanted to apprentice under my husband and learn everything he could about computers. And then I had one that loves to cook, and she's now a chef, and her husband's a chef at a Christian camp, and they've also worked for like the Westin and stuff too. So it can be so different for each one, right?
I struggle with that. My 7-year-old wants to, she's super independent, and she wants to like make everything like up on her own, and I'm like, whoa, yeah, I want you to do that, but I don't. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I think I was that kid.
It's wasteful, and one of the
Oh yeah, I had experiments in the fridge with like honey and maple syrup, and like, yeah.
But my kids would be like, oh, $15 maple syrup is going to
Yeah.
It's hard.
I guess it's better works for there.
I just tell my kids, because Faye does that a lot. I'm like, whatever you make, you're eating. I'm not eating it, you're eating it.
Well, that's true.
Will eat it. It has sugar.
Or maybe they can eat it in a smaller portion while they're trying out the recipe. You know?
Right, make smaller portions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
It's
a
hard to
doll
navigate
version.
like freedom and like letting them
Uh-huh.
take the chocolate. Wow.
I know.
And my kids experiment with, I feel free to let them do that, but for some reason in the back of my mind, it's like, there's like a little bit of control.
So they may not be ready for that yet.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's wisdom because, yeah, I was that kid too. I used to climb into other people's gardens and eat their flowers. And then on my wedding day, my mom said, well, basically she had like alien and then kid, normal kids. If you know anything about the personality types, the Myers-Briggs and everything, she didn't understand me at all. And she told my husband how difficult I was to raise. So I get that.
Yeah.
Hold on. Wait, I can yell. There, well, Kim's picking it up.
What a sweet little one.
So, how do you help, I have one child that's my free spirit, and definitely my negotiator kid. How do you help them with obedience?
Well, first of all, if they come to me with if they come to me with a negotiation that is logical and well thought out, I might change my mind. And that's okay. And they earned that by explaining their view, and they're demonstrating that they're responsible in it. And I might, change my mind.
So I guess, the other one when the mom has all the bunnies in a row, that's really impressive to me. Because if you know my 3 boys, one's running this way, it's my oldest. My middle is my quote-unquote good kid, that he gets overlooked a lot. And then my toddler is running that way. So the whole line thing, unless it's just me and Cameron, there's not much, it's just chaos. Can you speak into that?
Yes, I can. So with 12, I had to be really careful because like if they're all running in different directions, it could be really dangerous. So I did have to specifically train them certain things. Like I would have the youngest one in the stroller, and then the 2 other next oldest, toddler and other, had to hold the side of the stroller. And that's how we would walk. And if you're not holding the stroller, we don't move.
So you're just like insistent.
Yeah, but very gently and lovingly, just
Not being gentle.
we're not moving until you hold the stroller. And then they learn that that's the expectation, and they hold the stroller, and then we're safe, and we're all in one, and they're not grabbing things off the shelves, and like, if they want something, they ask, and I might think about it, but if they demand it, they definitely don't get it.
Well, what happens when you're in the grocery store and you have one that's running down the aisles because it's movie night and we're picking out snacks and she just won't stay next to you, and then if you are insistent, even in a gentle way, and like holding her hand and she's screaming, do you just let her scream?
No, I mean, I would go and train at home. And I would say, okay, now we're practicing like we're in the grocery store. So this is how we're gonna do it. And if you go in the grocery store and she starts to scream, okay, we're all going home, we're just gonna get in the car and leave, and nobody gets anything.
Oh, see, I say that, but then I'm like,
So you're just,
groceries,
you
so
follow
I was gonna
through.
say,
Yeah, you wanna follow through.
You're on it, like you
But
you're not like-
kindly, gently, lovingly, not yelling.
The other kids who are listening.
Well, they'll be happy too, because if you give them authority over each other, then they're unhappy that that kid is doing that.
Beat them up.
No, but they will understand that you're leaving for that reason.
yeah.
And then you might do something special with those kids, put the other one to bed and have a movie night with them or something. But eventually, everyone will listen if you expect them to.
That's what's so tough, is to follow through and be consistent.
Like you can't be distracted. Like you're not a very distracted person, are you? Like you're
Well, that's the most important thing at that moment, is that they listen to you.
Know that I will just put it on.
And you're willing to leave, and you're willing to do whatever's needed, you know, like with the line at school. If they're going to chapel and they're all, you know, running around and they're going near the cars and everything, well, we go back and you will walk again. And I'm very happy to have them miss chapel or miss their next class, and we spend the entire class practicing lines.
Wow. I love that. That is just like so. It's like you're a powerful person. Sorry. Like you're a powerful person, and you know it. You have expectations and standards that you won't allow your children to treat you this way or present themselves as that way.
Yeah.
It's like
And
you're
any
teaching
kid,
them to be like authoritarian, like a powerful person too.
and any kid can be taught to do this too.
Wow.
And it can be very gentle. It's not yelling. It's just a firm expectation. And you're not going to accept anything else.
Yeah.
And then you have all the room in the world for everything I was saying about individuality and grace and respect and trust. And they trust you and they respect you.
More fiery control than kids. Who don't, flash up, they don't want to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can be done very gently. It's like
the implementation.
It's like a whisper. It's like a quiet expectation. Kids know when a teacher comes into a room that is going to have expectations that they expect, even without saying a word.
I have a question. My 5-year-old is. I don't know.
You talk, girl. My 5-year-old is, he does, there's no listening. He doesn't listen. He's great outside of the home, but anything that I ask him to do, he just refuses to do. He has an excuse for everything that could possibly he needs to do. I don't know how to go about that.
Well, then you might need to be firm.
I feel like I'm a pretty firm person.
But not like firm in terms of getting angry or yelling,
Right,
but firm in
absolutely.
terms of, you're not going to leave the house without your shoes. You can sit here for 2 hours,
Yeah.
and I don't care, but you're not leaving.
Right. I can be firm about that. It's the picking up of the toys, and then eventually, like my oldest will do all of the work, or I will help too. And he's just like, he has an excuse.
You
Until
could
everybody's
have
done
some
with it.
toys that he puts
I
away.
try to do that. Yeah.
And then, well, he doesn't get lunch until they're done.
Right.
You can sit in there all day.
I'm trying to be better about it. Like if he's, you're always hungry, but you don't eat a meal, and I'm like, well, that's gonna be there for you when we get back. That's your lunch. So, because otherwise,
Or just
walk
the
away.
constant, just the expectation when he knows that it is unwavering, unbending.
Right.
And
That's
it's
where
not gonna change because you're
exactly, it's
going,
the consistency.
yeah, you're
of
going
following
to
through.
gymnastics and you gotta get there, so you're gonna drop what you're doing. It doesn't matter, don't go.
Right.
This is what you're doing.
Love it.
Yeah.
So love and logic isn't necessarily what you do. Like if they don't put their shoes on, you're not like, well, fine, go without shoes. Consequence of your own actions. You don't do that.
I'll just keep on going.
Sometimes that happens, like, I had one kid who liked to wear Crocs. And, with everyone getting themselves ready, they have to get themselves ready. And we were going to an Adrahaji day, so like a Emma Lab School day, and this kid had Crocs. And his group was the one doing the hike in the snow. And so I wouldn't have set that up, I wouldn't have chosen that for him, but he did end up having those shoes and he hasn't worn them since.
So you're saying he chose those shoes and you let him see the consequences?
I did, but it wasn't like I set it up. It was just what happened.
Oh, okay.
Because I can't check everybody's shoes when they go out the door.
Right.
So it was accidental, but I didn't drive back to.
So he put on his shoes like you asked everybody to do, put on their shoes, but you didn't see that he had his Crocs.
Exactly, yeah.
But you didn't cater to fixing it.
No.
Right? Let me go home and get your boots.
No.
Yeah, if you knew what we were doing, and that's what you chose.
year when we do the Mountain Lab School, they're all gonna wear the red shoes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's
I did that in
creating
school.
children that can think for themselves.
That's what it's all about, right? They're not like blaming me. You know, it's their choice. I have a few Colorado kids that like wearing shorts and don't wear coats in the winter. If they're not cold, does it really matter?
Yeah, I'll give them that final.
I know, I let my kids kind of divvy that out unless it's just freezing.
Or at least bring the coat with you in the car because sometimes it gets cold at night and you don't expect it. So,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. But we have a conversation.
Right.
So, yeah.
Is that book entertaining at all, or is it like drudgery?
I think it's entertaining, but I love history.
Yeah, well, I was thinking for my husband, because he's a huge history buff,
Oh, he would
but,
love that.
and I want like something that we can both be like on the same page with.
Yeah, it's good because it's all the original stories, like of Plymouth Plantation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all authentic, original history. And then the other book kind of helps explain the principles in the other one. So that makes all the difference.
Are those easy to come by, those two books?
That's a good question.
I just looked.
I mean, you can look them up, you can find them.
We found it?
The Christian history of the Constitution and the principle approach that goes through it.
Girls are next book club, okay?
But I mean, it's meaty stuff, but I mean, I happen to like
It'll take us
it.
all
Do
year
you
to
read
do
them
it.
like to your kids or with your kids?
Yes, sometimes we read them together and sometimes I read them and just implement it, you know, see what's going on.
So to clarify, you don't spank.
Well, I have, yes, but that's early on when you're like dealing with external, like internal, like before your goal is to get away from external.
Okay.
But sometimes you need it because if they won't obey you at all, then that's the way, we had to start that way.
Okay. That's
And that's biblical because it says so in the scriptures.
That's what I was wondering about. They said you have like a gentle heart, so I was wondering if that meant that you did. But
No, my gentle heart meant that I needed to in order to make sure that I was, firm.
And your older kids, what do they say about how they were raised?
They like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They really do appreciate it. Sometimes they'll even thank me and say, my son who comes up every weekend sometimes thanks me almost every week.
Wow.
And it's so different than their friends
Yeah.
and other people that don't respect them or, it's different and it can get criticism. Like you can get criticism from your family and people. Oh, you're expecting too much of that kid and they should play and they should have a free life and it's like later you just like smile and then later that controlling parent might not have the same results later. So,
At what age do you find that you've tried enough things with an individual child to know what their delight-directed responsibility, or even like what you said with learning? At what age do you think that you found out that your kid loved to cook and like that was their gift to carry on with for the rest of their education?
yeah, that's hard to see. Like sometimes it changes. So my oldest daughter, who is doing a PhD in literature, at one point she really loved history, really thought she was going to do history, but then moved into literature instead. And that's as an adult. So that can happen. And sometimes kids, they might want to change jobs, and then they can reason with you and say, I would like to try this other job because, and it's not just because they're doing a lousy job of the other one. That's not a good enough excuse. They have to, give a good reason why they would like this other job. And
What about like with their education, like tailoring it to each child? My oldest is only 8, so
Have you seen some things that she
Yeah, I mean,
likes?
we dabble in a lot of different things, and he enjoys a lot of different things. But I couldn't like pinpoint one thing and say like, this is the direction that we're going until you know, pivot or whatever.
And that's because right now is kind of the time to try things out. And then as they get older, they might focus more and really decide they really love math or they really love science or, and for now it's fine to just explore everything.
What would you like? So my 7-year-old is.
I would say I kind of know definitely what her interests are, but she has not a lot of interest in math or reading or anything like that. Like she wants to she's an artist at heart. She wants to do arts and crafts and cook, and that's just what she wants to do. Like I told her today when I was trying to read with her, you know, like put your soul into it. And she's like, Mom, my soul is in art. And I'm like, okay, that's so cute. Like, yeah, you know, I don't know how to navigate that. Like, this is what, I don't want to be pushy.
That's true.
The school or
Like,
they
we were
don't
talking
wanna.
about that when I came in, I think, with you.
But you still have to teach math and reading.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to explain to her.
So,
These are things
yeah,
she
but you
needs
can
to
make
know.
it fun.
Right.
You can do it in ways they like.
I'm trying.
And
Right.
you could find things to read that she's interested in. Maybe she wants to
Right.
read, one of my daughters who's an artist is reading a book on how to do realistic imaginary art. And the person who wrote the book did a lot of things for the National Geographic with dinosaurs and stuff.
Right.
And so she wants to read that.
Yeah, okay.
Techniques and styles, and it might not be a chapter book or
Right, yeah,
It's okay.
absolutely, okay.
Or maybe a recipe book.
a recipe book. Yeah.
She does like looking at recipe books.
And all kinds of reading are valid.
Yeah, good voice. Okay.
Or read something
Just
together.
like maybe not
she-
overthink it and just like go with the flow of what they enjoy while you're learning, which is what I feel like we do a lot. But then when it's like, okay, maybe I'm not doing it right, so we're gonna like bring this out, you know?
No, it sounds like you're doing it
Right, okay,
right.
okay.
I think it should be fun. Learning
Yeah.
should be fun.
Right.
If it's not, there's something wrong.
Yeah, okay, totally.
And there's math in recipes, right? When you
Yeah.
adjust them and things like that. You know, like you were talking about earlier about
Right.
the proportions and things, just make them smaller.
Right.
And they can learn division or subtraction or whatever,
Totally.
and fractions.
Make a lesson out of that.
And if they see you doing it too, so that
Yeah.
you're willing to do it,
Right,
then it's not like just something that a parent assigns them, and when they're older, they don't have to do anymore. A lot of people did that with reading, like some schools have like a reading hour and the teacher reads, but the teacher's not reading, the teacher's doing grading. So what is that telling the kids? That, oh, well, somebody makes you read until you get old enough and you do more important things. So have a reading time where you're reading too. Maybe put on Mozart and have tea and, and then everybody has a book and you're reading and everybody's in a book, and then at the end you could say, well, what happened in your book and what happened in your book, and then you just,
hardest part is like I keep saying consistency.
yeah.
Just like from day to day, it's like it's hard for me to implement the same things, not
I had to
in the
learn
same
that.
ways, but the
Yeah.
flow, you know?
I had to learn that, and I can be gentle but consistent,
Right.
and
It's like a huge.
that's like, very powerful, because kids won't reject something that they expect, that's,
Why do you think you have
Yeah.
so many children? What's your case for kids?
So when I came to know the Lord, so I was already an adult. I had 2 kids, and one was autistic, and it was very hard. And then I came to know the Lord, and He changed my whole life. And He told me that He wanted to be in charge of how many kids I had. And then meanwhile, my husband came to know the Lord, like 6 months after me. I was praying for him. First I nagged him, but it didn't work. It's a whole other story. And then the Lord Himself spoke to him, and he came to know the Lord. And then one of the first things the Lord told him in prayer was to be in charge of how many kids we would have.
Wow.
So he was trying to figure out a way to tell me, and I was trying to figure out a way to tell him that that was what the Lord said, and it was confirmed that both of us felt like that.
You think just for you or for everyone?
Just for us, just for our family. Now, the Lord can do many other things in other families, but that's what he told us. So then we just trusted that.
Wow.
So, and I don't regret it, it's wonderful. It
Yeah.
seems crazy, but.
I want to
Yes.
have kids.
Implement these first and then talk about it. No problem. You're gonna have to like it.
Yeah, get the bunny book and
Bunny
implement it.
12 kids will be amazing.
I need to get myself together first, is what you're saying.
Yes, don't have any more until you get yourself together.
Just gonna be chaos everywhere.
So Kat had a question.
You've already done the work.
Can you, hold on, pass the mic this way. Sorry. We're recording.
So, to like, okay, going from like external government and trying to move into like the self-government, going to trusting your children to make responsible decisions. Like, I feel like a lot of us feel like we're not implementing any of that. Where do we start? Like, if you could give an idea of where, like a small place to start. I feel like I couldn't trust my kids to make any responsible decisions at this point.
Well, you can
Without
start with
memory.
small things, and you want to check up too. Like, you want to trust, but also make sure, you know? Because if they get away with not doing it, then you're not helping. Like, they're not learning to be responsible. So, like, our kids will unpack the car. We come home from the groceries, and the kids will all bring the groceries in, even the little 8-year-olds. So, they have to bring all the groceries in, and there should be no groceries left in the car, and then they put them all away.
And they put them away.
And they can put them wherever they want, provided the fridge things go in the fridge. But I mean, if they're putting them away, it's okay if they decide where it goes.
See, this is my control thing.
And
gotta
see,
let
then
go.
I ask them, where did you put the noodles? You know, and then they're like, I know, and they go get it.
What if they're like,
Or like, my husband trusts one of the youngest kids, so the little one who's 8 will make him a giant iced tea every night. And so she goes to the kitchen and puts all the ice in and makes the iced tea and then brings it to him. And, you know, because we're kind of like, we worry that we're imposing on our kids or something by asking a favor like that, but they love us, they want to, they're happy to, they're wonderful to be trusted with bringing them. You should see her carrying the iced tea, and it's in like a giant bottle that's this big, because my husband, like, you know, he does a really big
But he's
bottle.
like 6'8", they don't know that. He's a big man.
Yeah, he's 6'5". And so they're like, she's carrying the iced tea, but she's so proud, you know? And we can trust her to do that, you know, where we say, oh, can you bring us a yogurt, or can you, and then the thing to realize, because our society does the opposite, like, don't ask anything of your kids, you're cutting into their childhood, or whatever. But effort produces ownership.
Yeah.
So if you ask a favor and they do it and they love it, it increases their love for you. Just like with a husband, if you know, ask them something to do for you, or, you know, sincere, like, you know, reach something that's high, or a back massage or something, they love you more. So there's nothing wrong with asking them those things. And so you can start with little things like that, like, could you make me an iced tea, and show them how to do it, and then that's small, and you can tell if it's not done, because then, what happened to my iced tea? And we're a very tech household, so we can even text the kid and say, what happened to the iced tea?
Well, my next question kind of goes with that of, my kids are now 11 and 9, right? I feel when we have left them at home for a small amount of time by themselves, we have an alarm and a dog, and we work 10 minutes up the street. my control and my freak outness, I think, is impeding, and the Lord has been on my heart to give them more responsibility and to let go. I'm having a really hard time with it, I'm not gonna lie. But how do we know, like, I don't know, I guess, I don't know if it's I'm not ready or they're not ready because they haven't proved it. Do you
See,
make
that's
them
the
prove it first?
No, because that's the opposite view. It's like, I won't trust you until you prove you're trustworthy. Well, that doesn't happen, does it?
No,
People who
that
say that, they're
scares
never ready.
the crap out of me.
Well, yeah, because what if they got hurt if you have to let it out?
That's,
But you have to think, so your oldest is 11, right?
and you know, Issa's very mature,
Yeah,
right?
she is. But you know, at 12, you're legally allowed to babysit other people's
And I had
kids.
that conversation, and I'm like, I can't even imagine leaving you alone by yourself, let alone with someone else's kid, and I see that as my restriction, right?
Yeah.
So, how do, like, do I just let him totally mess up the house and let him have it, or
no, I would
like?
let them do it in small ways, and then, you know, like, you're not testing them to see that you can trust them, but you are giving them a small and manageable thing, like iced tea, first.
Well, they already cooked dinner, like that's what I mean, they show their responsibility minus today and some of the stuff I'm repeating. Like they cook, they clean, they are the overly giving and abundant, responsible kids majority of the time. I'm just so, again, terrified in my own head to leave them alone. Even though I think back and I'm like, I totally walked home from school by myself and took care
I
of
went on
myself.
public transportation at like 9,
Yeah.
you know?
Lord, I need you to break some chains right now, please.
But you can ask the Lord. Like, he's there to help us. Ask him for very specific wisdom. What responsibility can I give you, son? Or what can I, you know, like, ask him. And he can do that. And tell you exactly what to do, you know? And then a lot of praise, that's another thing. You want to praise them a lot. When they do it well, praise them a lot. And some things are learning and you don't mention. Like, for example, my son, he put like our, you know, like our roll for our toilet roll. He installed the thing and it's a little crooked like that. It doesn't matter.
Right, don't.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
He did it himself, and he did it without being asked. It even stayed for a couple months with just one half and not the other side, and then just one day he decided to do it. And so it's okay that it's crooked.
Why are we such a broken society of needing control?
I can let go of control, but my husband cannot. At all. Like,
Well, when they do it well, he'll be willing,
right.
you know, because they will do it well. But it's faith, it's walking in faith and trusting the Lord to lead them and help you with that. So it's not easy, but it's worth it. Yeah, and some kids, like my daughter Becky, she's like that wild kid that, you know, you can't put too many boundaries or she'll do 2 boundaries beyond that, you know. But now she's, you know, a wonderful young adult, studying theology. She's 20 now. So, but she was hard to raise, but I had to just trust and,
Yeah, just keep on.
yeah.
Because my daughter was so easy for like basically forever, just like the easiest, sweetest, most amazing kid. So I'm super proud of that. And then she just, something happened. And now it's like, I feel like constantly, like I don't even know what to do, it's terrifying. Like, did I mess this up this bad? But
Well,
now when I think about it too, it's like, it's just like you said, you just have to trust. Like I really am doing the best I can. I'm trying to pour it into her.
yeah, did you really mess it up if they want to be with you
Yeah.
and they're becoming, you know, a person who loves the Lord?
Based on our conversation in Bible study, you got some things right.
Thank you.
Thanks, right.
And it doesn't have to look like the way we might expect.
Yeah, you're right. She doesn't have to do what I expect.
I didn't go with that.
Yeah, I mean, like, after I had 5 kids, I was like, I was recovering from the last one, and I was like, okay, I can no longer manage this. And I just like asked them, okay, can you cook me lunch? Can you do, and I didn't care what it was or how it was. I was just happy to eat it. And then they wanted to do better, and they, it just was by necessity.
Yeah. And I never thought about it that way. It's like, me feeling guilty about like giving my kids chores and doing that stuff. I was the oldest kid. I took care of all my other younger siblings. And we did foster care, and I would watch the twin babies when my mom worked. And I like delighted in it. I felt like I was helping. Like I felt like
Yeah, of course you were.
Yeah, it was never a
Important.
hindrance, never felt any sort of way.
Mhm.
I don't know why I
But
would
our
even think that
culture-
when raising my kids.
Our culture's the opposite now. It's telling us that that's wrong.
I'm brainwashed.
And then they don't feel they have any value. How many young kids are killing themselves?
Yeah.
They're not trusted, they're not respected, they're not valued. They're just made to be kids, and that's that. I mean, nothing's expected of them, doesn't have good results.
Because parents are no longer setting an example, right? Like, I feel kids are unvalued because their parents are not, I don't want to say broken, but broken, right? They're not showing them what this is saying, right? Like, this generation now, our generation is like in this in-between of this was reality, and now our culture is like this complete opposite, and everything's just like up in the air.
I mean, this culture here, so they were using the McGuffey readers, the Ray's arithmetics, they were teaching these character traits, and it resulted in a different kind of student. So, you know how we have our grades and you move up to the next grade, and it's your age that matters, right? That's not how it was. It was the first row was doing the primer. When you finished the primer, you moved to the next row. Maybe you were 16, maybe you were 8. And then when you finished school, then they say 8th grade education, but it was really high school. Because they started school later, and they know much more than we know now. And they had kids like John Quincy Adams. When he was 13, he was the ambassador to Russia. A 13-year-old in state, like, how many of our 13-year-olds could run a state, like be an ambassador to another nation? But they could.
I could not, right? I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Can we bring that back?
Yeah, that's why it's so good. And it was true, and it was real, and they lived these things, so.
I just want to like live in the mountains now, and like have 12 children.
Oh, that's what my book was so.
That was my goal. My God sent me back down here. The Lord made me come.
But I'm glad you're
Well,
here.
if any of you want to like friend me on Facebook, you can. I'm Kimberly Probst, and I have the whole bunch of kids, and I love answering questions, and I love helping, and I'll even do like a school date where I'll come to your house with my kids, and we'll do school together, and then have tea, and the kids can play. I call it a school date, yeah.
Wow.
Or a play date, or whatever, or just, the Lord made me an encourager, and I love to encourage. So anyone who wants to be encouraged,
I'm encouraged.
I'm here for
I'm
you.
excited about being a mom again.
Yeah.
Another try.
There's such a wide bandwidth. I'm always like, I don't have any more space for these extra things, but you do.
Well, when it's managing and it's not chaotic and the kids are actually helping, then you can think about other people and other places.
Makes sense. Absolutely.
I'm gonna start doing tea time reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can sit down and read. I
Yeah.
can do that
And they need to see you read, enjoying reading,
too. Yeah.
not doing the dishes while you make them read.
Right.
Seriously.
And then we feel guilty, like we should be cleaning or something. But the most important thing
You gotta let go.
classroom, they had this reading time. And the teacher said she hated it. She hated it every year because the kids would misbehave and everything. So I tried an experiment. So I went there as a student teacher, so the kids saw me as an authority, and I brought my own book. And I was reading something I could read in a day. I think it was like Animal Farm or something. So I just sat down and I read too. And she said she had the best reading day ever. Everyone stayed on task. They all read. They just had to see somebody else reading too. Like, the adults are going to read too. It doesn't seem obvious sometimes. But what is the message otherwise? It's like, I'll make you read until you're old enough and then you don't have to read anymore.
Yeah.
But really, as an adult, you should always have a book, right?
Yeah.
And the Bible too. But even like pleasure books too, like, it's okay. I'm not talking too long, am I?
Oh no, we're going to be really here for a while.
No, I'm just being educated, I feel like.
Well, and just be prepared to accept the criticism. Because you will get it. You know, people who don't think that your kids should be given those responsibilities, but some of those people depend on your kids. Like, you know, my son who's 14, who's doing the tech at the school, like, the teachers are like, okay, where's William? My tech isn't working. So, you know.
And for them, that's such like pride in what they're doing, not bad pride, but good pride in who
Yeah,
they
he
are.
knows he's needed.
Yeah.
And then I went to Africa for a week. I was in Uganda, and he had to manage all the tech for the entire program himself, because my husband was with me.
And he did good.
Yeah.
I love you.
Feel back for this because I feel like I'm like really relaxed. Like I do some classical homeschooling, but I'm really like an unschooler at heart. And like I'm okay with my kids learning, but then like the outside pressure, it always just gets me. Like we were at Mardel's today, and I'm buying him like entrepreneurial like books because
He's into it.
yeah, but then I'm like, I went down the reading aisle and I'm like, oh my gosh, he can't read. Like,
It's
you know,
okay.
Like, it's because the standard, like, you're saying that, like, I just actually bought the McGrath primer today. But it was like, how, I don't know, it's like there's not that expectation for them to move at their own pace anymore.
Right.
Like, it's just the standard that we
Yeah, I know if your kid isn't reading by a certain age in school, they're like, oh, they're behind and they're labeled and they're... No. The one who's doing a PhD didn't read until she was 10. And the first thing she ever read was the book of Revelation.
Oh,
You know, the readers just read, that's amazing.
Well, she wasn't ready before that, and now she's doing a PhD in literature. So,
That is just so interesting and mind-blowing.
Inspiring. Like, we really are brainwashed. And that's what we are, like, as a society, we doesn't have to see the way we've been told for so long.
no, it doesn't have to be like that at all. And that's great for your kid that's interested in all that. And, you know, criticism comes. Like, my parents didn't really like the idea of homeschooling at first, and maybe you have some of them. They also don't know the Lord yet. You can pray for Pam and Ian because they're starting to get in their 80s now, and I have been sharing with them for years. But they didn't like it at first. They didn't really know, but at least they were kind enough that they suspended their criticism and just kind of thought those things. And then now they're total proponents for homeschooling. So you just have to be patient enough. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's amazing. Thank you so much. But yeah, it's like the reverse of what the world is. kids do.
I told you,
Yeah.
all her kids are so, like, they would come over to our house and they were so kind and they didn't jump off the walls all crazy. I'm like, where are these kids and how did you get them like this? Because even mine are kind and obedient most of the time, but I don't think I've ever seen your children misbehave.
It's so interesting to me that you're not like, oh, you know, the other times. You're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I don't expect them to misbehave.
I think your expectations. Lord, I ask right now, we all get her expectations and follow through on it. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Yes, it is very doable.
It's so countercultural because that's not how I was parent. I had one who was completely free spirit, do whatever you want, and the other that was completely controlling. So my life was this like either or, but that perfection controlling, God has broken so many walls, but the more we sit here and talk, I'm like, wow, there's still a lot there.
And I'm learning a lot too. I mean, like that thing with the purity thing, you know? Like, is it so bad if I have a daughter who wants to wear, you know, something a little bit more revealing? It's not bad. It's not like terribly immodest, but I was having them wear like skirts and pilgrim outfits and
So where is that line? Isa loves fashion design. And she has this program where she's making all of these clothes, and I'm like, that's inappropriate. I would never let you wear that. And she thinks it's so cute, and then I'm like, oh, but should I let her at least kind of wear it? Again, like I'm having those boundaries of.
I mean, some things are okay to wear at home, but not at the school because we have a dress code.
And I mean, they're not even revealing, right? They're just tighter, right? Like, I don't really let them wear super tight clothes, except for sometimes there because they grow too fast and it doesn't fit you anymore. But she likes that form-fitting, like, the girl from Kane, I don't know if you guys ever see the music videos, always has the cute outfits like you have on. She wants to wear that at 11, and I'm like,
I don't know what's wrong with that.
again, I was so far the other way. I dressed like a hooker most of my life. And I literally mean that. Like, my skirts barely covered my behind. Like, everything was always showing. So I think I've gone the complete 360, and now I'm giving her, like, zero freedom.
I feel like that's very normal though, to feel what you're feeling, yeah.
I was
Absolutely.
trying to think like scripturally. What? I don't know if it says like it's okay if it's a little bit revealing.
Well, scripture talks about you want to be modest, and modest in the culture that you're in. So, like,
modest
in
in
some,
culture is just don't show any private parts.
well, like, there might be a culture in Africa where the women don't wear anything on top, but they're not immodest for where they are. We don't want to be the most immodest,
Yeah.
But we don't need to be pilgrims.
but we don't need to be pilgrims either.
Yeah, there's this quote by C.S. Lewis, and it hit me really hard when I was like in high school. It's like, don't mistake modesty for chastity. I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with like the purity you can bring to your children.
That's
So I
true.
think there is a standard of like how to dress and stuff, and God has been speaking to me about that. But I don't think it's.
I wasn't saying your outfit was wrong, by the way. Just
Oh, I know. I didn't think that. That was not good at all. Like, I'm the least offendable person in the world.
I already find men checking out my 11-year-old, like grown men, because they think she's a teenager. And I'm like, I don't want to put her in tight clothes, like, because then they're really gonna be like oogling after her, because she looks like she's 15.
And my sister had that problem. She was like a double D, and she said all she did, she just wore a normal t-shirt. And it was really annoying to her that people saw her that way.
Yeah. I had some friends that way too. It's like, we can wear the same things. Me as an A cup, you could not wear the same things.
Yeah,
That's the way they
exactly.
treat her.
So it really depends on each person.
Body type.
Yeah.
Have
And
you
each
started that
context.
conversation, like what she views as modesty? Like, is
Yes,
that,
because
like,
she is, again, I've ingrained it in them there. You don't show your body parts. So they will, she's gone to the point that she judges other people, and I'm like, you can't say that. They're not our family. Yes, I don't let you wear that, but you don't get to judge them for wearing it. So I again, I've ingrained it, she knows what she should and shouldn't do, but I also think she's seen other friends whose daughters are always showing things, and she now thinks it's cool. So I'll see her running around at home like that, and Nick is like, he's like, cover all, I don't want to see any of your body. That's not a
My
good
head
thing.
covering school though, so. You know what I mean? Like that, I think that is where the, like the internal versus extrinsic or like
Yeah,
whichever, you know, she's starting to wrestle with that.
yeah,
And like just being able to like talk through, because she obviously has that ability to say, that's not right, like for herself. So I think those values are there. It's just moving from that external you telling to her making those judgments and being able to trust herself.
yeah.
She dresses herself. Is she ever inappropriate? Again,
It might be
sometimes I'm like,
different for different people.
it is.
Yeah.
I like putting leggings on with my dresses, but that's ridiculous. I don't think my kids do that.
I have to say no. But
And you know, your own heart and your children's heart, it's like, what's a sin for some people isn't a sin for others. I know it's intense, but it's just like, I don't know, doesn't God in my heart and calls us to different things and different standards of purity in different areas.
it's true.
I have some kids that have tattoos.
Right.
They are godly tattoos. They tell a story about the Lord, but I didn't know how I felt about that. But when it says in Scripture that not to tattoo or cut yourself, it's talking about a specific thing where they were worshiping God Baal and doing those things. It's not talking about putting a cross on your arm. So, but I had to expand my view on these things. There's some people that might never be reached except by someone wearing a tattoo that they ask about it, you know?
I did hear recently that women that in Africa that put on tops now, that there is a different attitude about that now, and it's for the better, is what I heard. You know, and this was a tribe that used to, you know, be bare on the top for women.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting, and it was I think I don't know if it was CBN, you know, Christian Broadcasting Network or something like that, where they were talking about that, and that women actually had greater opportunities as well. And there was a school there where they were teaching things like sewing and I forget what it was, but it was kind of funny to my eyes, because it was sort of like those things that women did maybe in the 1950s here, you know, like teachers and secretaries and seamstresses, and those were the kind, and it was this particular school for girls, and that was what they were learning. And so it was, so I learned a lot about that little feature, about that particular thing, and that's where they were talking about that.
Yeah, we encountered in Kenya, they have the Maasai tribe, and they're now reached. They were unreached before, and when we came to visit them, they had like a prayer dance and everything, and they wouldn't let us participate unless we knew the Lord. So since the women, we knew the Lord, they let us participate, and that was really cool.
We'll come back next month and teach us. Somebody. More questions, the better. Man, I have too many things in my head right now.
Yeah, but I think you guys are gonna like it. And just ask the Lord every day. Ask Him, you know, I do. What's right for this kid, and what should I do here? And you know, He'll lead you.
Are we all out of questions? For now, then I'll be calling you Kim.
Okay, yes, you can friend me, you can call me, whatever. I'm very happy to. So.
All right, well, you want to end us with a prayer?
Sure.
And then we will sit and chat or whatever, but.
Lord, I lift up these lovely ladies and their families, and Lord, I pray that you would show them your way of liberty of conscience, and of internal self-government for kids to grow up into adults that love you, that choose you of their own, and that make their own choices in life that glorify you. Lord, I pray that, and that you would lead each one, and it will look different for each one, and for each family, and for each kid in each family. And I just pray, we so much want to serve you, and we want a legacy that serves you and that loves you. And so we pray for that, and just be in every detail of that for us. Put into our hands every book, every activity, everything that you would have us do for each individual child. And let them feel loved and respected and trusted. And I just ask that in Jesus' name.